Hi everyone, Vanman here. In the previous video, we ran through all of Pokemon Red and Blue with the only pre-evolved Ghost-type Pokemon in the game, Ghastly. Today, let's follow that up with another Pokemon with a unique typing, Dratini. That's right, Dratini is the only Dragon-type evolutionary line in Gen 1, which is certainly an interesting typing for a solo run, because right off the bat that endows us with a full 4 type resistances in the form of Electric, Water, Fire, and Grass. Granted, Dragon is also weak to Ice, but I'm sure that won't be a problem for us later. Additionally, Dratini has one of the deepest move pools in the game, with access to all the heavy hitters of Gen 1, such as Body Slam, Ice Beam, Blizzard, Thunderbolt, Fire Blast, Surf, and Hyper Beam, as well as a handful of extremely useful utility moves such as Mimic, Reflect, and Rest. However, as strong as Dratini's typing and move pool are, Dratini really falls short in the stats department, being a sort of jack-of-all-trades, master of none. For starters, that 41 HP combined with its 45 defense is just abysmal, because it means that Dratini will not be able to take hits very well, plus its mere 50 special means that Dratini's damage output will be extremely lackluster. And while yes, we do have somewhat of a saving grace in the form of agility, which Dratini learns at level 20, its mere 50 speed means that many of the stronger opponents will get in the first attack before we have time to set up the agility in the first place. So as we play through this run, it'll definitely be interesting to see if Dratini's strong type coverage and setup moves will be able to compensate for its terrible base stats, or if its weak offenses, defenses, and speed will be too steep of a challenge for us to overcome. The full rule set for this run is in the description below, but in summary, I can only use Dratini in battle with no battle items, I can't use any glitches or RNG manipulation, I must save before boss battles and then reset if I lose, and finally, Dratini's placement in our tier ranking will be determined by its real-world time spent completing the game while playing at 4 times speed. As a challenge for the viewer, everyone pause the video to make a prediction in the comments for Dratini's final time of completion, then after the video is over, come back and edit your comment to describe how accurate your prediction was. And in addition to commenting, be sure to give the video a like, and subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss another installment, as well as consider supporting the channel on Patreon. And now, let's dive into our attempt to beat Pokemon Red and Blue with just a Dratini. To begin the run, we must first alter the game to replace the Squirtle starter with Dratini, causing the rival to choose Bulbasaur. And in spite of Dratini's overall lackluster stats, the first rival battle is still not an issue, because Dratini begins the game with Wrap, a 15 base power move that lasts for 2 to 5 turns, and also prevents the user from attacking as long as Wrap is active. So a consequence of this is that as long as you outspeed your opponent, you can theoretically prevent the enemy Pokemon from attacking indefinitely just by spamming Wrap over and over again, which is exactly what happens against Bulbasaur, allowing us to claim victory without taking a single point of damage. However, Wrap does come with a bit of a drawback in that it's only 85% accurate, so there was always a small chance that the opponent can escape from the Wrap lock and retaliate with a move of their own. But still, without access to any other strategies, Wrap can be an effective way of getting past various hurdles in the early game. And in Dratini's case, that's exactly what we plan on doing in the upcoming battle against Brock. And as we complete the Oak's Parcel mission and make our way to Viridian Forest, let's talk about our plan for getting past the Rock-type specialist. First, while in Viridian Forest, we spend a couple minutes training up against the bug catchers and the wild Pokemon to level up to level 10 when we learn Thunder Wave. And that's because Brock's Onix is so fast that we normally wouldn't be able to outspeed it, except that in this case, we can use Thunder Wave to paralyze the Onix, which has the added benefit of cutting its speed in half and allowing the Wrap lock to be much more effective. And even though Brock does for some reason carry a total of 5 full heals for each of his Pokemon, all we have to do is just keep spamming Thunder Wave and forcing him to use up his supply of full heals until he runs out. So, with that strategy in place, let's head into the Pewter Gym and see how we fare in this battle. To start, Brock leads with Geodude, and even though unlike Onix, Geodude is slow enough that Dratini can outspeed, we may as well open with Thunder Wave just for good measure. Except, as many of you have already realized, I've actually made a huge blunder here, because it turns out that Geodude is immune to Thunder Wave. And before I get the inevitable comment that says, well, yeah, Vanman, don't you know that ground-type Pokemon are immune to electric moves? I need to explain my thought process here. You see, in the previous run when I beat the game with just a Ghastly, I reached a point against the last on Route 6 with 3 Pidgeys, where it took me by surprise that Ghastly could be hit with Sand Attack, because Sand Attack is a normal type move, which I assumed Ghastly would be immune to because of its ghost typing. Whoa, we just got hit with Sand Attack. Okay, I didn't realize that would work. Well, I guess I was wrong. I guess we just got lucky against the Sandshrew earlier. But after some research, I found that stat-altering moves actually ignore type immunities. So going into this Brock fight, I was under the impression that the same would apply to Thunder Wave. But unfortunately, it turns out that the game distinguishes between stat-altering moves like Sand Attack and status condition moves like Thunder Wave. So while Sand Attack can hit Ghastly no problem, Thunder Wave has no effect on Geodude or Onix, which obviously results in a loss in this particular battle. So after that defeat, we try Brock again, just to see if Rap on its own could get the job done. But in this case, Rap's damage output is so weak that whenever Rap gets its 15% chance to miss, that gives Geodude an opportunity to inflict massive damage with Tackle, and that happens just enough times for us to get Geodude down to only about half health before it finally knocks us out. So at this point, we have no choice but to head back to Viridian Forest to train to a higher level. And as we watch this training montage play out, I do also want to mention that I get comments all the time from people complimenting my game knowledge and telling me that they've learned so much about Pokemon strategy from watching my videos. And while I do appreciate the flattery, and I'm honored to help other people in the community learn more about this game that we all love so much, I'm only human, and I make mistakes like the one I just did against Brock all the time. I mean, it wasn't even until my Alakazam vs Gyarados video that people pointed out to me that the odds of being immobilized from paralysis is only 1 in 4 and not 1 in 2 like I originally thought. And after I found that out, I even messaged Scott's Thoughts and asked him, hey, did you know paralysis isn't 1 in 2, it's 1 in 4? And he was just like, no way, you're trolling me, right? And I said, no, I'm completely serious, it's 1 in 4. And he just said, well, I guess you learn something new every day. So yeah, even people who play Pokemon for a living can carry misconceptions about the game for a very long time before they're ever corrected. But to me, the fact that even in the case of an extremely simple game like Pokemon, there's always room for personal improvement is exactly why this game just never gets old, and I keep coming back to it again and again. But getting off my soapbox and back to the run, we eventually train up to level 13, and I chose the number 13 for a very specific reason, and that is, the way all the behind-the-scenes damage calculation in battle works involves a lot of rounding to the nearest whole number, and it turns out that that damage rounding is much more favorable when your Pokemon is at a level that ends in 0, 3, 5, or 8. So often when leveling up, you want to make it to the next damage rounding threshold to maximize the damage output in comparison to the amount of time it took you to reach that level. So, now that we've made it from one damage rounding threshold to the next, let's head back to face Brock again and see if we can fare any better this time around. Well, to start, we open with Leer against Geodude to lower its defense, but even then, every turn of Rap is only doing a blip. Not to mention, Leer is especially awkward if Rap ever misses and Geodude uses Defense Curl to cancel out the Leer, which is exactly what happens after only a few turns. Eventually though, we do take it out, with Geodude only ever managing a single tackle before going down, allowing us to make it to Onix in green health. However, the problem here is that Rap's damage output was so low against Geodude that we only have 9 power points remaining for Onix. So to have any hope of dealing enough damage, we have to open with a few Leers, while Onix returns the favor with a few Screeches, followed by a Bide, allowing us to finish the Leer setup. But unfortunately, even at this higher level, we still don't outspeed. So when Onix goes for another Bide, we have no choice but to attack into it with Rap. And this happens not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 times in a row, until eventually we run out of Rap power points altogether. And at this point the writing is on the wall, because the only other damaging move we have access to is Struggle. But to use Struggle, we'd have to spend all of our Leers and Thunder Waves first, allowing Onix ample time to knock us out with Tackle. So, back to Viridian Forest it is, and here we begin to see yet another aspect of this run that holds Dratini back considerably, which is that Dratini is in the slow experience group, meaning that it takes Dratini far more experience points to jump from one level to the next than it does for most other Pokemon, and especially when you're relying on a move like Rap to knock out the wild encounters, getting all the way to the next damage rounding threshold of level 15 is nothing less than a complete grind. So, while in our Nidoking run, for example, we reached level 15 in just over 5 minutes on the real-time clock, for Dratini it takes us all the way to the 22-minute mark, at which point I'm still not even certain that that will be enough to defeat Brock. But there's only one way to find out, so let's head back to the Pewter Gym to give it our best shot. Against Geodude, we managed to open with Leer and then take it out, with Geodude never once using Defense Curl. But still, since a few of our wraps missed, that again leaves us with only 9 power points for Onix just like last time. And in this case, it turns out that Dratini is actually speed tied with the Onix. So while Onix does eventually bring us all the way down to low yellow, after opening with the Leer setup, we win the speed tie against Onix just enough times for Wrap to get the job done, finally winning us the Boulder Badge at a full 23 minutes and 23 seconds. The only other Pokemon on this channel with a higher Brock split were Execute and Ditto, by the way. So needless to say, this run is not off to a fantastic start. And even as we leave Pewter City and progress through Route 3, these battles again take longer than usual to complete because Wrap takes multiple hits to knock out each Pokemon, and I even consistently used Leer to drop the opponent's defense to preserve our Wrap power points, but even then it wasn't enough, and we still had to backtrack to heal at the Poké Center before progressing any further. Eventually though, we do make it to Mount Moon where we pick up the TM for Water Gun, which finally gives us a more effective attacking move besides Wrap, and also bolsters our power point situation just enough to make it all the way through the cave without backtracking, putting us arriving in Cerulean City at just over half an hour. And here, as always, our choices are to face Misty or Rival 2. And in Dratini's case, the clear choice is Misty, for several reasons. First of all, Dratini resists her Pokemon's water moves, meaning that Misty's good AI that deprioritizes not very effective attacks will force her team to just spam tackle the whole battle. Plus, Dratini has now reached level 20 and learned Agility, which will allow us to not only outspeed, but also badge boost our attack stat. So, as we kick off the battle against Staryu, we initiate the Agility setup, and also paralyze Staryu with Thunder Wave just to be safe, then spam Wrap until it goes down. Then we give Starmie the same treatment for a painless victory, winning us the Cascade Badge. And now that we've defeated Misty, it's here that Dratini finally begins to pick up its pace, because upon Misty's defeat, she awards us with the TM for Bubble Beam, which allows us to quickly dispatch of Rival 2, as well as all the trainers on Nugget Bridge leading to Bill's house, after which we exit Cerulean City and head to the SSN where we pick up the TM for Body Slam, which will serve as our principal attacking move for most of the run, since it's a powerful physical move that also makes use of Dratini's strongest stat in the form of its 65 attack. Then after acquiring Body Slam, that allows us to easily take out Rival 3, after which we head to the Vermilion Gym to take on Lieutenant Surge, who, like Misty, should be a piece of cake, because Dratini resists his electric attacks. So to start, we again open with the Agility setup to outspeed the eventual Raichu and also badge boost our attack, after which Voltorb and Pikachu's defense are so weak that they go down to a single Body Slam. Then Body Slam doesn't quite knock out the Raichu, but its retaliatory Thunder Shock does almost nothing thanks to the type resistance before another Body Slam takes it out, winning us the Thunder Badge, as well as giving us access to the TM for Thunderbolt, which I immediately teach to Dratini. And now, with Thunderbolt, Body Slam, and Bubble Beam in our arsenal, those moves are plenty to sweep through Route 9 and Rock Tunnel with no issue, leaving us arriving in Celadon City at 48 minutes and 24 seconds. So, as much of a slog as it was to make it to Cerulean City, after Cerulean City it does seem that acquiring just a handful of powerful TMs was enough to transform Dratini into a force to be reckoned with as we round out the early game. Then upon making it to Celadon, in addition to completing our usual shopping errands, we also pick up the TM for Ice Beam as well as the TM for Reflect, which I don't teach to Dratini just yet because before starting this run, I sat down and brainstormed a very specific moveset routing for every major battle, and the routing that I came up with has us learning both Ice Beam and Reflect much later in the run. So for now, after completing the shopping errands and also picking up the HM for Fly, we head back to Lavender Town to face Rival 4 with the same moveset as we've had since Vermilion, namely Body Slam, Bubble Beam, Thunderbolt, and Agility. And as we kick off the battle, we go in with the utmost confidence because the Rival's team is so underleveled that they don't really pose a serious threat. To start, Pidgeotto does manage a single Sand attack, but still can't stand up to the super effective Thunderbolt. And although we do miss a couple attacks against the next several Pokemon, allowing them to deal some damage along the way, we still eventually one-shot Gyarados with Thunderbolt, two-shot Growlithe with Body Slam, one-shot Kadabra with Body Slam, and two-shot Ivysaur with Body Slam as well for another relatively painless victory. However, although the past several boss trainers have had teams of Pokemon that were so underleveled that we've been able to contend with them no problem, up next we head into the mid-game of the run, where Dratini's slow level up rate is going to start catching back up to us for the first time since Viridian Forest, because the next boss trainer we have to face is Koga, whose Ace Weezing sits at a whopping level 43, and Dratini is currently only at level 30. So needless to say, we have some serious preparation to do before we're ready to take him on. So first, we finish up the Lavender Tower mission, which brings us to level 32, followed by a couple optional trainers in Cycling Road and Silphco, bringing us to level 33. Plus, while in Silphco, we also pick up a few of the vitamins laying around to boost our stats. Also, as a side note, remember that our comprehensive rules for these runs prohibit the use of store-bought vitamins. So the vitamins that we pick up in Silphco, Safari Zone, and Pokemon Mansion are all exceptionally valuable, especially for weaker Pokemon like Dratini. And finally, to round out our training in preparation for Koga, we knock out most of the trainers in the Fuchsia Gym, bringing us to level 35. And although you might think level 35 wouldn't be nearly high enough to contend with Koga's team, keep in mind we do still have agility to boost our attack stat, and to prepare for this fight, we also teach the TM for Reflect to hopefully tank the enemy Pokemon's powerful physical moves, especially the Weezing Self Destruct. So let's head into the battle and see if that strategy pans out. Koga leads with Coughing, and here we're hoping that it will use literally anything besides Smokescreen to lower our accuracy. And fortunately we do manage to avoid the Smokescreen while we set up Reflect and Agility, after which we spam Body Slam. But then, even after a full 3 badge boosts, Dratini's attack is so mediocre, and Coughing's defense is so strong, that Body Slam still doesn't quite deal half, and we end up taking down the Coughing in 3 hits. Then, although Muck takes even longer to knock out than the Coughing did, we still luck out in this case, because Muck never actually lands a single attack before fainting. Then the second Coughing just misses with Smog and uses X attack before being 3-shot, allowing us to go into Weezing with green health. So now, ironically, we're actually hoping for a self-destruct, because Reflect would allow us to survive the attack. And luckily that's exactly what happens, winning us the Soul Badge on the first attempt, in probably the luckiest battle of the run so far, even in spite of Dratini's uninspiring damage output. But now that we've defeated Koga, that presents us with a very interesting decision to make, because Koga's Soul Badge allows us to use Surf in the overworld outside of battle, thus giving us access to the Cinnabar Gym to face Blaine. So because of that, you might think that at this point we would teach Surf to Dratini, number 1 to allow us to traverse the ocean to Cinnabar Island, and number 2 to allow us to inflict super effective damage against Blaine's Fire-type Pokemon. But for the first time on this channel, I actually decide not to teach Surf to a solo Pokemon that can learn it, for a couple reasons. First of all, there are several other moves besides Surf that we need to contend with many of the upcoming boss battles, especially in the Elite Four. And the fact that Surf can't be forgotten once it's learned means that for most of the rest of the run, it would just be complete dead weight for Dratini, getting in the way of other moves that are more valuable. And second of all, it actually turns out that Dratini's superior attack stat, coupled with the badge boost from Agility, make Body Slam a more powerful move than Surf anyway, even in spite of Surf's type advantage against Blaine's team. Also keep in mind that as of now, we only have the badge boost for attack, defense, and speed, whereas we still need Blaine's Volcano badge to get the boost for special. So now, because we can't teach Surf to Dratini, we have to head to Pallet Town where we catch a wild Poliwag to teach it Surf instead, allowing us to make it to the Cinnabar Gym to take on Blaine. And as we kick off the battle, our strategy here is exactly the same as it was against Koga. That is, set up Reflect and Agility, then spam Body Slam. And by the way, Reflect is especially important in this matchup because Blaine's good AI will deprioritize fire moves, meaning that the only way his team has to damage us is with either Stomp or Takedown. So, during our setup, Growlithe manages a Leer and a couple takedowns to bring us to yellow health, but then after the setup is complete, Dratini's low level and poor stats again come back to bite us because, just like Koga's Coughing, even after a full 3 badge boost from Agility and 1 more from Leer, Body Slam still only does about half, after which Blaine heals with a Super Potion, but then luckily 2 more Body Slams take out the Growlithe without us taking any more damage in the meantime. Then we 2-shot Ponyta with it just using a failed Growl before going down, but then unfortunately we level up going into Rapidash, which is really bad news for us, because in Gen 1, all of your badge boosts go away when your Pokemon levels up mid-battle. So because of that, Rapidash takes a full 4 hits to knock out, with it bringing us to about a quarter before going down. And against Blaine's Ace Arcanine, Body Slam does a pitiful amount, before before it retaliates with takedown for the knockout. So, in preparation for the next battle, I decide to feed Dratini a single rare candy to prevent the mid-battle level up. But it doesn't do any good, because although we take out Growlithe no problem, Ponyta lowers our attack with a couple growls before going down, so although we do land a couple clutch critical hits against Rapidash, Body Slam doesn't deal nearly enough to Arcanine and we get knocked out. Well, we're obviously getting brick-walled at Arcanine, so what's our game plan here? Well, after some deliberation, I eventually decide it's time to feed a bunch of rare candies up to level 43, and although I did have enough rare candies to go up to level 44 instead, I stopped at level 43 to meet the next damage rounding threshold like I mentioned earlier when we were preparing for Brock. So hopefully at this higher level, that will strengthen Dratini's damage output enough to finally stand a chance against Blaine's Arcanine. So let's restart the battle yet again and see how we fare at the higher level. First, we initiate the Reflect and Agility setup as usual, during which Growlithe does very little with takedown, but even despite our higher level, Body Slam still comes just shy of one-shotting. But fortunately in the next turn, Growlithe gets trapped in paralysis from Body Slam, and we knock it out. Then Ponyta is two-shot, with it just using a failed Tail Whip, but then against Rapidash, a couple Body Slams bring it to just a sliver, and as luck would have it, it just has to get in a growl to lower our attack before going down. Meaning that, once again, Body Slam doesn't deal nearly enough damage to Arcanine, resulting in yet another reset. So, it looks like as lucky as we were against Koga by avoiding Smokescreen, Blaine is making up for that luck because we can't seem to avoid Growl. However, we do finally get the luck that we need in attempt number 4, because although Growlithe, Ponyta, and Rapidash do chip us all the way down to yellow, we nevertheless make it to Arcanine without being growled a single time. Then against Arcanine, Body Slam deals about a third and also paralyzes, and Blaine heals with a Super Potion. Then for the rest of the battle, we spam Body Slam while Arcanine spams Takedown. And although at the very end it looked like we were done for, Dratini hangs on at just 5 health, and one final Body Slam gets the job done, winning us the Volcano Badge. Now, I'll be honest with you, I definitely came out of that battle with a lower opinion of Dratini than I had going into this run, because of course I knew it was not going to be a trivial matter to get past Brock, but I did still anticipate the badge boost from Agility doing a lot more of the heavy lifting than it has been so far. So moving forward, we'll just have to wait and see if Agility will eventually turn out to be the saving grace that we need, or if Dratini's unimpressive raw damage output, even in spite of Agility, will continue to hold it back. So to test that, up next we head back to Silphco to take on Rival 5. And unfortunately in this battle, I admit I actually slightly misplayed the first attempt, because my plan was initially to forego the Reflect and Agility setup against the opening Pidgeot, and instead just spam Thunderbolt, so as to take it out as quickly as possible to avoid Sand Attack, then set up against Gyarados. But as we see here, the problem with that strategy is that Gyarados will always spam Dragon Rage, because its good AI thinks that Dragon Rage is super effective against Dratini's Dragon type, despite that Dragon Rage is a set damage move that always deals 40 HP regardless of type effectiveness, meaning that neither Reflect nor the badge boost from Agility do anything to mitigate Dragon Rage at all. And with Dratini's poor base HP stat, only a couple Dragon Rages is all it takes to leave us at just a single hit point. And even though we do miraculously make it past Growlithe and Alakazam without taking any additional damage, Venusaur finally knocks us out with Leech Seed. Now, to be fair, it's really easy to forget that Dragon is super effective against Dragon in Gen 1, because Dragon Rage is literally the only Dragon-type move in the game, and by definition it never actually inflicts super effective damage. So why exactly they made Dragon super effective against Dragon is beyond me, but regardless, now that I've realized that Gyarados will spam Dragon Rage, and we therefore don't need Reflect, we go into the fight again, this time two-shotting Pidgeot with Thunderbolt, and one-shotting Gyarados with Thunderbolt. And now since Growlithe is much less threatening than either Pidgeot or Gyarados were, that gives us free reign to set up Agility in preparation for Alakazam, after which we use Body Slam to finish off the rest of the team no problem. And now that we've defeated Rival 5 and completed the Silphco mission, that unlocks the doors to the Saffron Gym, so we head there next to take on Sabrina. And in this battle, there's obviously no need for Reflect since Sabrina's Pokemon are all special attackers, but we do go ahead and set up Agility against the opening Kadabra, during which it luckily just uses Recover twice, but then it gets off a massive critical hit Psybeam to bring us to a third health. But now that our setup is complete, we begin the sweep with Body Slam, and Kadabra goes down. However, Mr. Mime sets out to prove just how unimpressive Dratini's damage output really is, because even after 3 badge boosts, it still survives Body Slam on a sliver. But still, it just goes for a useless light screen before going down, and just like Mr. Mime, Venomoth also hangs on the red and retaliates with Poison Powder before going down. Then finally against Alakazam, it too, even with its exceptionally poor defense stat, yet again tanks the Body Slam. And now, even though Alakazam could knock us out with Psybeam, it instead goes for Psy Wave, which deals all of 3 damage before we take it out in the next turn. Well, it's a good thing Psy Wave is a terrible move, otherwise we might have been in some real trouble. But in any case, that victory earns us the Marsh badge, leaving us with only 2 badges remaining. Now, at this point, I realize many of you may be wondering why we haven't fought Erica yet, and the reason is because first, I wanted to completely finish all the battles in which we needed Reflect, so that we could then replace Reflect with Ice Beam. And the reason that we didn't do it the other way around, that is, finish all the battles that need Ice Beam and then teach Reflect, is because we need Ice Beam for Gym Leader Giovanni, which must always be the last gym battle of the run. So therefore, the battles that require Reflect have to come before the battles that require Ice Beam. Now, granted, I realize I could have fought Erica before Sabrina, since we didn't actually need Reflect for the Sabrina battle, but I'll be completely honest with you, after Rival 5, I just completely forgot about Erica, and after Sabrina, I even headed straight to the Viridian Gym, only to find out the doors were locked and remember that we have to backtrack to Celadon. But in any case, as I'm sure you predicted, Dratini is so overleveled against Erica that Ice Beam completely trivializes the battle, with the entire team being outsped in one shot, winning us the Rainbow Badge, after which we face Giovanni. And here, I actually forgot to heal before this fight, but it doesn't even matter because we set up agility against the initial Rhyhorn, and its special stat is so paper thin that we one-shot it with Ice Beam, then one-shot Dugtrio, one-shot Nidoqueen, then almost one-shot Nidoking, who retaliates with a tackle to bring us to red, but then another Ice Beam finishes off the Nidoking, as well as the Rhydon, winning us the Earth Badge. So now that we've defeated all 8 gym leaders in the Kanto region, we only have one more boss battle remaining before our entry into the Elite Four, Rival 6. But first, we have just a couple more errands to run, because up next we make a detour over to the power plant to pick up one more rare candy, as well as an HP up. Then since Dratini is currently at level 49, I feed a single rare candy up to level 50 to learn the move Hyper Beam, replacing Body Slam in preparation for the upcoming battles. Reason being that Body Slam has so far been coming just shy of one-shotting the enemy Pokemon, even in the case of Pokemon with weaker defense, such as Blaine's Growlithe and Sabrina's Alakazam. So I'm really hoping that Hyper Beam will finally break that parity and allow us to consistently one-shot our opponents, starting with Rival 6. The rival leads with Pidgeot, which we immediately outspeed in one shot with Ice Beam. Then against Rhyhorn we set up our agilities, and although Rhyhorn does manage to chip away at our health in the meantime, it still doesn't make any difference, because we then one-shot Rhyhorn with Ice Beam, one-shot Gyarados with Thunderbolt, one-shot Growlithe with Hyper Beam, one-shot Alakazam with Hyper Beam, and two-shot Venusaur with Ice Beam for another painless victory. So it seems as if, at least for now, Hyper Beam was definitely the right call, and all we can do now is hope that that trend will continue as we make our way to the Elite Four. However, I'm sure you all know what's coming next, because as we traverse through Victory Road, the only thing running through my mind is how in the world we're going to make it past Lorelei, the Ice-type Master, and the only trainer in this entire run that will ever inflict super effective damage against Dratini. I mean, the plan is to set up at least one badge boost against the opening Dewgong, and then spam Thunderbolt, but given how strong Lorelei's team's special stat is, and given how weak Dratini's special stat is, I highly doubt we'll be able to one-shot. I'm hoping though that we'll at least be able to survive the onslaught of Aurora Beams from Dewgong and Cloyster just long enough to make it to Slowbro, at which point we'll be able to resume the agility setup and one-shot the rest of the team after that. So, that's the plan anyway, and all we can do now is head into Lorelei's chamber, kick off the battle, and hope that it will be enough to get the job done. Lorelei leads with Dewgong, and of course we open with agility as usual, after which Dewgong as predicted uses Aurora Beam, which deals massive damage down to less than half. Okay, this is not good, considering that even if we set up another badge boost, we won't survive the next attack. So now we have no choice but to go for Thunderbolt, and you see, this right here is exactly what I was talking about. Thunderbolt, even after a badge boost and despite being super effective, only deals a measly half damage to Dewgong, after which Dewgong uses Growl, which is actually beneficial because it badge boosts our special even further. But even then, the next Thunderbolt still isn't quite enough to get the knockout. It is enough, however, to prompt Thunderbolt to Super Potion from Lorelei, allowing the next Thunderbolt to take it out. However, Cloyster then tanks our attack and promptly knocks out Dratini with another Aurora Beam. Alright, so let's recap. We got especially lucky in that battle just now, and we were still nowhere close to winning. So this game plan is obviously not going to work. Fortunately though, we do still have a couple outs to victory. First of all, we have 4 remaining rare candies at our disposal, and we can also fly back to Saffron City to pick up the TM for Mimic, which will allow us to copy Slowbro's Amnesia to buff up our special stat once we eventually make it that far. So we do just that, and after acquiring the TM and flying back to Indigo Plateau, we teach Mimic and use 2 rare candies up to the next damage rounding threshold of level 53. Additionally, just to be safe, I saved the game prior to teaching Mimic and feeding the rare candies, so as not to commit to that strategy just in case I decide to go for a different game plan later down the line. So, how do we fare at the higher level? Well, in this first attempt, Dugong denies us the opportunity to find out how much of a difference the higher level made, because after 1 agility it lands a critical hit for the knockout. And ordinarily that wouldn't be a huge deal, because we just reset and try again, wasting only a few seconds. But this time when we reset, we have to waste even more time by teaching Mimic and feeding the rare candies all over again. So then after we do that, we face Lorelei again, and this time we set up agility, and Dugong lands yet another critical hit for the knockout. Because of course it does. Dugong is only around 14% to crit, by the way, so 2 crits in a row is especially unlucky. But then fortunately on the next attempt, we do manage to avoid the critical hit, and this time after a single agility, Aurora Beam gets a clutch attack drop to badge boost our special. Then after Thunderbolt deals half to Dugong, it goes for a Growl to badge boost us even further, allowing the next Thunderbolt to knock it out. So now against Cloyster, we have a full 3 badge boost set up, and even still Cloyster just barely hangs on the red and knocks out Dratini with Aurora Beam. So after those few battles against Lorelei, it looks like we've answered our earlier question about Dratini's damage output, and the results are not promising. So now unfortunately, it looks like we have no choice but to train up to a higher level, because ideally what we want is to survive not 1 but 2 hits from Dugong, allowing us to set up not 1 but 2 agilities, in turn allowing us to consistently one-shot the Cloyster. So to achieve that, we head back to Victory Road to clear out the trainers there, then head back to the water routes surrounding Cinnabar Island to clear out the trainers there, which after a full 10 minutes brings Dratini to level 56. Then we fly back to Indigo Plateau, save the game, teach Mimic, feed 2 rare candies to the next damage rounding threshold of 58, and try Lorelei once more. However, although it pains me to say, it turns out that Lorelei is Dratini's kryptonite in this run, simply because Dratini's stats and type matchup are just so poor that we would go on to try this battle over and over again with the same demoralizing result each time. However, throughout all these repeated losses, I did come to discover that we can survive 1 Aurora Beam from Dugong, followed by 1 Aurora Beam from Cloyster. So what that means is that our eventual victory will require getting especially lucky with some combination of badge boost from Agility, Aurora Beam, and Growl, as well as rest from Dugong, and or Lorelei healing with Super Potions. And although it took a full 7 failed attempts to get there, we do finally reach attempt number 8 at this higher level, in which we open with Agility, and Dugong's retaliatory Aurora Beam gets an attack drop. Then Thunderbolt lands a clutch critical hit, which prompts Lorelei to use a Super Potion, allowing the next Thunderbolt to get the knockout. Then Cloyster just barely survives Thunderbolt, and although that does put it in Super Potion range, Lorelei is not actually guaranteed to use it, and Cloyster instead brings us to red with Aurora Beam. But then the next Thunderbolt knocks out the Cloyster, and now that we've made it to Slowbro, we should be in the clear, because we mimic Amnesia and then set up Amnesia, during which Slowbro even hits us with a couple Growls to badge boost our special even further. So, after the setup is complete, we're finally able to one-shot Slowbro, one-shot Jinx, and one-shot Lapras for the win. Well, Lorelei was certainly not the easiest hurdle to get past just now, but at least we then get to enjoy a short reprieve since we all know Bruno was one of the worst trainers in the game. So now let's head into his chamber to make quick work of his team. To prepare for the battle, since we need a strong special move to contend with his 2 Onyxes, and we already got rid of Ice Beam for Lorelei, now I decide to replace Mimic with the TM for Blizzard. So, as we kick off the fight, that obviously allows us to one-shot the initial Onyx with ease. Then against Hitmonchan, I realized that I was so hasty to knock out the Onyx that I actually forgot to badge boost. So I go ahead and set up a few agilities here, after which Hitmonchan goes for Ice Punch to deal half, followed by a Mega Punch that lands a critical hit, and oh my god. Did that really just happen? Folks, that's a Vanman first. Yes, that's right, Dratini is the first Pokemon in the history of this channel to ever lose to Bruno. I'm just beyond belief right now. So, remember when I said that Lorelei is the only trainer in the game that will inflict super effective damage against Dratini? Well, turns out I was wrong about that, because even Hitmonchan of all things, with its pathetic 35 special, still poses a serious threat with Ice Punch. And what's more, I was so confident going into Bruno, because, you know, he's Bruno, that I didn't even save before that fight, and now we have to start all over again at Lorelei. Fortunately though, it doesn't actually take that long to get back to Bruno, because we defeat Lorelei on the very next attempt thanks to a timely rest from Dewgong and a super potion on Cloyster. So now this time going into Bruno, I make the sensible play and forego the badge boost setup altogether, and knock out Onix and Hitmonchan as quickly as possible. And fortunately this time Hitmonchan just gets off a weak Thunder Punch before going down. And here that causes Dratini to level up going into Hitmonlee, which means that now is actually the most opportune time to set up the badge boost. So we go for a few agilities while Hitmonlee manages to deal some chip damage with Jump Kick before being one-shot with Thunderbolt. Then Onix number 2 is obviously one-shot with Blizzard. Then since Machamp has much more formidable special than any of Bruno's other Pokemon, it takes a full 3 hits to knock out, but still, we're never actually in any danger of losing, and we take the victory no problem. Then up next is Agatha. And look, what do you want me to say? It's Agatha. And against Agatha, unless you have a super effective move like Earthquake or Psychic, you're just not going to get past her with any sort of consistency. And it's really just a matter of getting lucky enough to avoid Sleep in Confusion for long enough to slowly chip away at her team's health in spite of their massive speed and special stats. For example, in this first attempt, we don't even land a single hit, because during the agility setup, Gengar hits us with Nightshade, confuses us, puts us to sleep, and continues spamming Nightshade for the knockout. And in this case, since Dratini is not fast enough or powerful enough to dispatch of the Gengar in a timely fashion, there's really nothing that we can do about that, apart from just reset and just patiently wait for Agatha to cooperate. So then in the second attempt, this battle starts off going a little bit more smoothly, because after our first agility, Agatha switches out to Golbat, and after Golbat takes a Thunderbolt down to Yellow, it just uses a failed Supersonic before going down in the next turn. However, when Gengar comes back out, it's not so easy to deal with, because a couple confusion damages followed by a couple Nightshades is plenty to knock us out and cause another reset. However, in only the third attempt, we finally get a battle that goes our way, because we open with just a single agility against the opening Gengar, and this time I decide to spam Blizzard instead of Thunderbolt to get around Gengar's formidable special. And even though Dratini does hit itself in Confusion a couple times, we then snap out of Confusion and finish off the Gengar, and we go into Golbat in green health. Then Golbat goes down to a couple Thunderbolts without inflicting any damage thanks to a Super Potion. Then against Haunter, since I really want to save our remaining Blizzards for the next Gengar, we instead spam Thunderbolt, and even though Haunter does confuse us and put us to sleep, we wake up right away, knock out the Haunter in 3 turns, and go into Arbok in the yellow. And against Arbok, Thunderbolt brings it to just over half, and then it gets off a clutch Screech to badge boost us, after which we finish off the Arbok with Hyper Beam. And finally against the second Gengar, we spend our last couple Blizzards to bring it down to yellow, and Gengar retaliates with Nightshade to bring us into red. Then, since we're out of Blizzards, we now have to resort to Thunderbolt, which brings Gengar to a sliver. And although Agatha's next Super Potion heals more HP than Thunderbolt dealt, the next Thunderbolt lands a clutch critical hit for the knockout. So for now, I definitely call that crisis averted, because if we hadn't gotten especially lucky on that last attempt, there's no telling how many resets it would have taken to claim victory in that fight. But regardless, now that we've made it past Agatha, the rest of the run is just a sprint to the finish line for Dratini, because the next 2 battles are entirely trivial, thanks to Dratini's moveset being especially well suited to contend with both Lance and the champion. Because as we head into the Lance battle, his opening Gyarados, just like Rival 5's Gyarados, will always spam Dragon Rage to deal exactly 40 HP, allowing us to set up a couple agilities and knock out Gyarados with Thunderbolt. Then since the rest of the team is weak to Ice-type attacks, all we have to do is set up another agility for good measure, then spam Blizzard to one-shot Dragonair number 1, Dragonair number 2, Aerodactyl, and Dragonite, allowing us to defeat Lance and move on to the champion in painless fashion. And against the champion, we go into this battle all but totally certain of our victory, because the champion's team is basically just a repeat of the Rival 6 team. So, just like with Rival 6, all we have to do is set up agility against Pidgeot, whose attacking moves are so unthreatening that there's no fear of it knocking us out, after which we one-shot Pidgeot with Blizzard, one-shot Alakazam with Hyper Beam, one-shot Rhydon with Blizzard, and one-shot Gyarados with Thunderbolt. Then Arcanine isn't quite one-shot with Hyper Beam, but it just hits us with a couple Leers before going down to Thunderbolt, And although Blizzard comes just shy of knocking out the champion's Ace Venusaur, and the champion does annoyingly heal with a full restore, the next Blizzard gets a freeze, and we take out Venusaur with one more Thunderbolt, making us champion of the Pokemon League. Results. Dratini finished the game in 6 hours and 45 minutes game time, 2 hours and 31 seconds real time. Conclusion. Before going into this run, I really had high hopes for Dratini and honestly expected it to perform with a B-tier finish. After all, Dratini is not at all lacking in its move pool, and it even gets a stat-boosting move to set up at the beginning of the especially tough battles. And for most solo run Pokemon, that's usually enough to do the trick. But in Dratini's case, its poor stats both offensively and defensively, coupled with its one weakness to Ice-type attacks, causing it to get brick-walled at Lorelei, was just too much of a setback that agility wasn't quite able to compensate for. Not to mention that almost a quarter of Dratini's total runtime was in preparation for Brock alone, thanks to the extremely weak starting moveset and also the slow level up rate, thus prolonging our training in Viridian Forest, and also requiring us to grind against lots of optional trainers throughout the mid-game as well. So, thanks to Dratini lacking the real firepower to sweep through the early game or the late game, resulting in a slog pretty much from start to finish, Dratini has earned its place well into the D tier for Pokemon solo challenges in Gen 1, just above Nidoran Female and just below Nidoran Male. Thank you all so much for joining me as we beat Pokemon Red and Blue with just a Dratini. As always, if you like what I do and want to help me continue to provide you with Pokemon content, be sure to give the video a like and subscribe and ring the bell, as well as consider becoming a patron on Patreon. And thank you so much to all my supporters who have helped me come this far. See you next time, everyone. Take care. Alright, what's our game plan for Mewtwo? Do we Agility and Hyper Beam? Or do we just spam Blizzard and hope for a freeze? Nah, let's not go with the cheese strats. I'm gonna try Hyper Beam first. And then if that doesn't work, we'll try for the freeze. Okay. Psychic? Oh my god! Dratini's special is horrible. Would you look at that? Well, at least we outspeed now. Okay, Hyper Beam, come on! Power through! Are you serious? Wow. Double badge boosted Hyper Beam, it didn't even deal half. And now it has Barrier up, so now we can't even use Hyper Beam anymore. Okay, yeah, we're going the free strat. Hey, look at that. Okay, now we win. Okay. Well, that's one way to do it. Wow. I mean, I thought Hyper Beam would get there. I guess not. Double badge boosted Hyper Beam dealt a third, dude. That's crazy. Well, we're putting Dratini to bed, okay?